Good evening. Hi. I just wanted to say thank you all so much for all of your congratulations and kind words. You are all so sweet for encouraging me with this book contract I got and my books about the Grim Reaper. The first of which is coming out later this year. For those of you who may have missed my last announcement, my book is called, for now, The Company of Death, though the publisher may give it a different name. I actually just got back my first round of edits from the editors yesterday morning, so it's time to revise, rinse, repeat. I just can't wait for you all to be able to read my book. And I told you to ask me questions, and I answered a lot of your questions in the comments section on my video from last week, but there were some repeated questions, some frequently asked questions. So I thought I'd address them here for anyone else who might be interested in hearing the answer who maybe didn't see my answers in the comments. So yes, there will be an audiobook, but no, I will not be the one reading the audiobook. The publisher will be hiring a professional audiobook reader person. I have a degree in theatrical performance. That's what I went to college for, so I might be able to pull it off if I tried, but I've never narrated an audiobook before, so I'd rather leave it to the pros. Besides, you guys don't get how amazing it is for me to look forward to someone else performing my story. That is going to be really awesome. And I'm sure whoever the publisher chooses is going to be fantastic, but I don't know who that's going to be yet. They probably don't know who that's going to be yet, but as soon as I do and I'm allowed to tell you, I will tell you, so you'll be able to find out. Yes, there will be an ebook, Kindle, etc., which you can buy online from anywhere in the world, Amazon or whatever your preferred online bookseller is. I don't know if it's going to be exclusive to Kindle for time being like a lot of books are, or if it will be wide before it goes to Kindle Unlimited, but I'll let you know as soon as I have the answer. The contract didn't include foreign rights, so if you live outside of the US, which I know a lot of you do, and you want a print copy, you'll have to order it online from your preferred bookseller, Amazon or whoever you like, to be shipped to you. The contract also didn't include translations, so it will just be in English, since a few of you have asked about that. But depending on how well it does, that might be something that I can make happen in the future. I've had people reach out to me about translating some of my indie work in the past, so it may happen again. Who knows? Yes, there will be signing events where you can come see me in person and I will sign your book for you, or you can buy a book there. The publisher is located in North Carolina, and I'm hoping for a launch event in Charlotte, because that would be great. The bookstore, wherever that's held, will retain signed copies, and if you want one, you can order directly from that bookstore if you can't actually come in person, and I will provide that info to you when it's available. And then, of course, there's cons, and I'll definitely be letting you know at all the cons that I will be attending, where you can buy the book from me in person or bring something for me to sign. I haven't attended a con selling a book since Awoken was released, so it's been a while, but I'm looking forward to doing it again. It's going to be so much fun. I need to make an author website. I have a domain. It's elisahansen.com, but there's no website there yet. But as soon as I get that website up and running, I will give that to you too. Some people asked about what my inspirations were for this story, especially for the vampires, because you know me, I like to talk about vampires. I actually came up with the idea for this story and the series in general and the whole world before I even started doing vampire reviews, so my vampire expertise was much narrower back then. And of course it's developed since I've been writing it and I've put in some of my new knowledge, but I've stuck to what I originally came up with for the most part. But my biggest influence on vampires, and one of the main reasons why I started doing vampire reviews in the first place, was Anne Rice's Vampire Chronicles. My vampires don't have the extreme powers and the alien origin story that the Vampire Chronicles vampires do, but there are some similarities. I mean, those vampires influenced a whole generation of us, so it's kind of hard to avoid. But I would say my biggest subconscious influence on my novel was the movie Zombieland, which I didn't realize until after I wrote it and then went back and watched it again. I was like, oh, okay. And I actually used Zombieland as a comp title when I was pitching and querying my story, but Zombieland's much more comedic than my story. It's very lighthearted. It's a great movie. It's fun. It's not perfect, but it's fun. Not that there's no humor in my story, but I wouldn't classify The Company of Death as comedy. I love that you guys are so into death books, though, and death stories, and I asked you to let me know if you knew of any death stories that would fit what I was looking for, and thank you so much for sharing everything with me that you came up with. A lot of people mentioned The Book Thief by Markus Zusak, and I didn't know about it when I started writing my book. But I did finally read it a couple years ago after I finished my story. I loved it. And I love that death in it has feelings and opinions about the story he's telling. He's an impartial observer, but he's not really impartial. He's invested. But still, it's not his story, you know? He is just an observer. He doesn't interact with anyone. He doesn't have conversations or forge any relationships. It's an amazing book, and everyone should read it. If you haven't read it now. Some people mention Sandman Death of the Endless, and actually haven't read any of the graphic novels, but I'm familiar with her. I have some friends who are kind of obsessed, so I've gotten it through osmosis. And she's kind of this idea that death is the opposite of what you expect. She's perky and she's pretty. She's a subversion, and that's really cool. And Neil Gaiman is brilliant, but I wanted a story about the classic pop culture trope of the Grim Reaper, you know, the skeleton in a hood, because that's my favorite, and that's what I wanted to see, having a story of his own. So she's cool, but she's not what I was looking for. Have you seen the old movie Death Takes a Holiday? That's probably the closest thing, conceptually, but not aesthetically. And Meet Joe Black, which was the modernized spin-off of it, is just... Of course, I am familiar with Terry Pratchett's Discworld Death. I mean, who isn't? I read Masquerade when I was a teenager because Phantom, I read anything to do with Phantom of the Opera. But that was all that I had before I started my story. And I didn't let myself read anything else until I'd finished my story. And then I went back and read then Mort, Reaper Man, Soul Music, Hogfather. I'm still where I know I got some more to go. And I've seen the movies, and it's definitely speaking my language with the whole classic skeleton in a cloak thing, but, you know, the entire Discworld series is comedy and social satire, and I wanted a serious story. So death as a person is probably the closest to what I want in that, but the world is not. It's a totally different tone from my book. Again, not that my book doesn't have humor. I mean, it's me. You know, I can't go long without making some stupid jokes. But you wouldn't find my book in a humor section. You may laugh while you're reading it, but it's not classified as humor. I hope you laugh. Though my sense of humor is kind of dumb, so you might just roll your eyes and laugh at me instead of with me, but I'll take it. Just read my book. So when it comes to portrayals of death in books that are comedic, but not what I was looking for, I found a couple. There's this one, which I found in the humor section of Barnes & Noble, and it's cute, but it's not great. It was one of those books that I was like, oh, I like it, it's almost what I'm doing, but I could have done it better, you know, in my own opinion. No offense to this author. This is a very cute book. It's called Death of Life, the shocking new memoir from death, and it's kind of like a Paradise Lost sort of thing, with death from the beginning of time to now, and it is his adventure and his story, but it's a comedy. And something like this, but if it were serious. So I wrote my own. This one has all of the things personified, and fate is actually the protagonist of the story, but death is one of his friends. And again, this is a comedic book. This is a book that's supposed to be making you laugh on every other page, and I didn't love it. Death wasn't what I wanted. It was a subversion again. He was the opposite of what you expect. He was a hypochondriac germaphobe, which is funny, but not what I was looking for. Though my main issue with this book was the portrayal of women. There's two female characters in this. One is literally the reincarnation of the Virgin Mary, and the other is a total slut. And yeah, it had a big Madonna whore issue with this. Cute, but take it with some grains of salt. This is a Dorinda Jones book about a character who is a human who is a Grim Reaper. And she's not death so much as a psychopomp, but it still kind of fits in the family. See, she's got little Scythe and skull shoes on the cover. It's really cute. And this was more of a urban fantasy romance thing, and it's nice to see a female Grim Reaper for a change. I didn't love it. I know Dorinda Jones has another Death series that I haven't checked out yet, which I want to, but it looks pretty on my bookshelf. This is Scythe by Neil Shusterman, which I haven't read yet. I actually just got it, and I'm looking forward to it. I've heard good things. This is a young adult book, so should be a good read. I will let you know what I think about it after I read it. This is Christopher Moore's Dirty Jobs, which is a great book. I didn't love the ending, but everything up to the ending was hilarious, and I love Christopher Moore's sense of humor. And you can see the cover has a little baby Grim Reaper in the baby carriage, which is kind of a spoiler for the book when you read it. But in this book, humans become death merchants, which are basically Grim Reapers that do the passing of souls into the afterlife thing. So this doesn't have death, my guy, in it, but it has the themes of death stories that I like. So if you like death stories, which a lot of you seem to, you might like this, especially if you like funny ones. And this is the sequel, which I have just recently acquired and have not yet read. I do love that its cover is pink, though. It's so pretty. This one, A Breach in Death, is an indie book, which I picked up at a local bookstore. You can see it's got a big Death Tarot card on the back with the Grim Reaper, by Matt Thomas. And I started reading it, and I didn't really get into it, so I put it down, and I haven't gone back to it, but I keep meaning to give it a second chance. But this is a modern, more urban fantasy sort of story, and actiony and serious, not comedic so much. This is Horseman by Mike Nichol, which I found at a used bookstore recently, and I started reading it. I got this far into it and I lost interest. You know, Horseman, like Death Rides a Pale Horse sort of thing. And yes, Death in my book has a horse, and his horse is the correct color, not white. And this is very literary, very artsy, which I just wasn't in the mood for when I was reading it, but I'll go back to it and I'll finish it. It's a short book. I'll get through it. You can see I have a lot of death-related books in my library. Unlike my vampire library over here, I have a whole separate death bookshelf in a different part of my lair. Oh, one more. This one is Call Me Grim by Elizabeth Holloway, which I read on my Nook app, and has since been re-released as Tempting Death. So if you're interested in finding it, look at that title. And it is a young adult book about people who become Grim Reapers, and it's actually a romance between a human girl and a Grim Reaper boy who is not the Death, but he's got this like scary overlord boss who might be the Death. There's actually a sequel, which I haven't read yet, so it might be more explained in that, but this was a great read if you like stories about humans who become Grim Reapers. Kind of like that TV show Dead Like Me, if you've watched that. A couple of you recommended Death with Interruptions by Jos Saramago to me, and that sounds right up my alley. I actually hadn't heard of that one before, so thank you. From what you guys told me, it's a story with death as sort of an outside force like the book Thief, but then he comes more into it halfway through the book, so I'm excited to read that. I have added that to my TBR list, looking it up. Are there any other deaths out there in books of their own or in TV? You know, think of like Bill and Ted, where you have death as the guy and he's there. But again, that's a comedy. What else is there? The Seventh Seal, but it's close. The Seventh Seal is more in the direction of what I want, but something new, something fresh, something modern. Of course, I wrote my own. That's why I released this book in the first place. And it became a story of its own. I'm not trying to write the death book or the definitive only Grim Reaper has an adventure of his own that's not comedy book in existence. I hope there will be more, because it's a lot easier to read books than to write books. And if other people are going to make those happen, I would like to see them. Thank you again so much for all your support and encouragement. I cannot wait for you to read my book, whether you end up buying it and spending money on it, or getting it from a library, or borrowing it from a friend. I don't care. I just want you to read it. Oh, it's going to be so long. I'm, you know, end of the year, but it's February. We can wait. If you have any other questions for me, please ask. I will either answer them in the comments, or if there's enough, I'll make another video. And I will definitely update you when there's more news. I will be returning my edits to the editor of the publishing house pretty soon, and then they'll do another round. And then once the book is finalized and set in stone, then they'll make the cover and find the audiobook narrator and do some marketing and some promotion and all that fun stuff. And I cannot wait to share it with you. Thank you again. I love you. Good night.